Are you a voice teacher just starting out, or have you been running your own studio for a while? I'm Michelle Marquardt DeVoe, and for over 13 years, I have run my own successful voice studio. But I'm not just a voice teacher. My true gift is as a business strategist and coach, and my true passion is to empower other voice teachers to grow their businesses. What if I told you there was a better way to run your studio like a well-oiled machine? I designed a self-guided online course for independent voice teachers like you. It covers a huge amount of material with over 4 hours of content and includes downloadable exercises and resources to use in your business immediately. When you finish this course, you will have the tools that I've used to grow my own business and help hundreds of other teachers do the same. So what are you waiting for? Join me to build the studio you've been dreaming about.
Hello, and welcome to this session of the NATS Virtual National Conference. I'm Cynthia Vaughn. I'm the Associate Editor for Independent Voices for NATS member newsletter, Internos. I'm so pleased to introduce this session entitled, With a Little Help from My Friends, Collaborative Teaching in the Voice Studio. Kristen Coffey Rondo serves singers of diverse ages and ability through Sand Dollar Studio, where she also provides mentorship opportunities for beginning voice teachers. Michelle Marquardt DeVoe is a founder of Faith Culture Kiss Studio and the Speakeasy Cooperative, a collaborative co-working experience for independent voice teachers. Complete biographical information on our speakers can be found in your digital program book, and of course, this session's listings in your guidebook app. I want to remind you to note questions you might have as you listen to this breakout session. Our speakers will try to answer as many as possible. Please enter your questions in the chat or comments box, and our assistants will moderate the questions. At this time, I invite you to sit back, silence your electronic devices, or your vices, whatever, and enjoy this session. Thank you for making the NATS Virtual National Conference part of your professional development this year. Please join me in welcoming my friend Coffey Rondo and Michelle Marquardt DeVoe, who are so extra that they both need 3 names. Cheers.
Cheers, Cynthia. Oh my goodness, that was amazing. She totally warned us she might do that, and we called her bluff. Thank you, Cynthia.
I love it.
Thank you all so much for being here today. Michelle and I are absolutely ecstatic to talk about this topic that is so important to us and to our studio cultures. It manifests differently in how we both operate, and we can't wait to share it with you. So what to expect today? I'm going to slam through this so fast because there's so much content. So this is going to be kind of like a podcast. It's just a chat between friends, no slides. We're just going to chat about what we do and how it works, why it's important to us, and how it can serve our communities. Feel free to get up, drink water. You've been in front of your computer already all day today because there have already been so many amazing sessions. Take care of yourself. Do what you need to do. We can't see it anyway. We've got our amazing moderator and friend, Karen Merstick-Michaels, here keeping track of the chat, keeping track of the questions. Karen, thank you for being here. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat. Karen will make sure that we see them, and we will do our best to answer them at the end. And if you still have questions, we have a Speakeasy Mixer tomorrow at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern, and the info for that is in Guidebook. And we hope to see you there. So with that, let's dive in. Michelle, go.
Yeah. Okay, so what is collaborative teaching? Because it's kind of a buzzword, I think, a little bit now. It's like, oh, we collaborate, right? We're going to postulate that collaborative teaching is inviting additional voice professionals into your studio culture to better serve your singers but it assumes expertise and common ground. So this is where it gets a little different. It's not silos of knowledge. So it's not pinball where the student is pinballing between teachers, but it's more like a fertile field of soil where the teachers are kind of the soil and all the different nutrients and all the different mojo that comes in that soil. And then the student is planted within that field of soil so that they can grow. So it challenges us to keep our teaching at an appropriate level. And side note, I would encourage anyone here who has not seen the Curse of Knowledge presentation to boop on over to that. I got that word, collaboration right there. I got booped from my dear friend Kristen. Go on over to that at around minute 12:43. She talks about the specific need for collaboration to be a way that we don't overtalk our students and that we actually meet them and kind of unlock that curse or lift the curse of knowledge. So she frames it in academia, but we're going to frame it a little bit more for independent here, and then also academia could apply it.
Yeah, totally. So it's different than just, oh, I've got two different voice teachers and I'm hopping back and forth. There's intent and there's strategy behind collaborative work in any kind of studio. So it's an intentional team that's developed based on the studio culture and the student's specific goals and needs. So when you bring in a collaborator or a teammate, or when you refer a student out, however it manifests for you, you gotta have an intentional reason for bringing in this voice professional or this diction expert or this collaborative pianist, whoever, right? You gotta have a specific reason for bringing them in so that their unique skills, knowledge bases, connections, whatever, can serve our students in a way that we can't. So the beautiful thing about collaborative teaching, it's a strategic way of decentralizing pedagogical power. Introduce it. Oh, does that preach? It preaches.
It preaches, girl.
And it introduces our students to new processes and ways of thinking. I was actually thinking about this morning, right? So say you've got a student who has worked with the same teacher from age 9 to 19, and then they go to school and they major in voice, or they want to do like a pre-professional track or whatever. If they've only ever worked with one teacher, they're in for a world of confusion because they know one language, one way of doing things, one way of processing music, one vocabulary.
Yeah.
Instead, if we can introduce that student in that 10 years that we have them in our independent studios, if we can introduce them to an entire community of voice professionals, how much more solid will they be starting out their career? Yeah?
I love, Kristen, can I butt in on you? Because I love the way that you're framing this in terms of setting the student up for lifelong success rather than just success in my studio. And sometimes we get a little territorial, and we say, I'm in charge of this student from this time to this time. But that actually, even it reminds me of like when elementary school kids transition from a single classroom, single teacher, many subjects, multi-teacher.
Yeah, like when they change classes.
And then they have to go to like middle school where all of a sudden you're doing single subject learning and they're just like, I can't keep up. So I love what you're saying right there.
Totally. So there's a quote that I love. I came across this fantastic TED Talk. I'll share it with you if you want. It's this Harvard-based ethnographer named Linda Hill. And she has this quote, and she talks about collaboration. She says, we have to unleash the talents and passions of many people and harness them into a work that's useful. This is collective genius. So if our idea of collaborative teaching is students just bouncing around to disparate teachers who aren't communicating with each other, that's not collaboration and that's not collective genius, that is chaos.
Yes.
The whole point is to harness those talents and passions of our colleagues to propel the singer and our colleagues toward a greater good.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's really the key, is that collaboration is not pinball. Collaboration is a knit together community of teachers. So we have some considerations we want to talk about. Colleagues whose pedagogical Pedagogical philosophies allow for only one teacher at a time. So many teachers have actually been taught that you can confuse your student if they're getting input from multiple teachers. And Kristen and I will talk a little bit about how we navigate that in just in a few minutes. But this is one of the things you have to consider, knowing that when you choose to make this decision to become a collaborator, you are willingly saying, I am going to step back. I am going to listen. Everything out of my mouth isn't going to be gospel truth to this person, and that is a benefit to the teacher. And then to respect other teachers' philosophies. If another teacher has a philosophy of shepherding one person, you can't impose this on them. It's not fair to the teacher, it's not fair to the student, and it just brings resentment. So we have to kind of do the internal work in ourselves about opening to collaboration. And then we have to remember how difficult that could be to another teacher who was raised in a one teacher at a time mentality. I was taught in a one teacher at a one time mentality, and I had to go through that emotional curve of like, oh, it actually makes me better when I collaborate. Like, that's a real thing to face.
It is. So with that, we have to be so careful to choose collaborators we trust, right? We invest so much in our students and so much in building our brands and building our reputation and in serving our singers well. Of course, we want to partner with people whose pedagogy, whose ethics, whose brand, whose reputations we trust and admire, right? So we want to work with people who understand and respect our studio culture too, even if it's different, right? Different's not wrong, it's just different. So we want people who get what we're doing, even if it's different from them. We want to collaborate with people whose work and artistry we admire. So, and that does not matter, no matter how experienced they are, no matter how seasoned, no matter how new they are to the field. I mean, we've all seen people who are decades younger than us, but whose work and whose work ethic we can be excited about and we want to partner with them. So whoever we collaborate with, it wants to be someone whose work ethic and artistry we really admire and aspire to. Also, when choosing collaborators, we want to choose people whose company we enjoy, because we're going to be working with them a lot, and our students are going to see us working with them. So I found a quote by comedian Robert Orban: if you can laugh together, you can work together. My team teacher, Coleman Clark, and I, we laugh a lot. Our poor students sometimes are probably like, okay, can we sing now? But it's good. If you're laughing, you're learning. Our students get to see us engaging in creative play, and that's how art happens. Art happens through spontaneity and joyful creativity, right? We also want to collaborate with people who aren't afraid to respectfully disagree with us.
Yes.
Iron sharpens iron, right? We don't want to surround ourselves with yes people. We want people who will lovingly and thoughtfully say, have you considered? Could we try? What about? Because this opens up a broader scope of opportunities for both ourselves and our students.
Yeah, I love that idea about, I think it's so important for us to model disagreeing in front of our students.
Yes.
So I need my student for me to be able to say, this person I respect, I admire, this is how I would have done it differently, and to the other teacher's face, like, not behind their back, but like, tell me more about what you're talking about. Give me information, because those students, it's this fear-based thing, right? Those students need to be able to process through what they agree with and what they don't, and we need to empower them to have language around that. So the language that we use models to them how to be collaborative in their singing and whatever, if they want to be future teachers or, in life.
Yes.
Even if they never go on to music.
In our studio, when Coleman or I disagree with each other, we throw a little party. I will stop right there and I'll go, oh my gosh, we just disagreed. Look at that. This is awesome. Okay, let's talk about the pros and cons. Let's talk about different ways to approach this. Because what does that show to our students? It shows mutual respect, and it shows abundance, and it shows security. I don't have to be right. It doesn't always have to be my way. And that does not affect my standing or my ability as a teacher.
Absolutely. So when the student, one of the things that can also be a little challenge or consideration is that you might come to collaboration because your student has asked you to become collaborative without talking to you about it. So basically they come to you, especially as independents, it's a free market. So they will come to you and they'll say, oh, but I'm going to do, this happens to me a lot. I'm going to do pop, rock, jazz work with you, but I've got my classical teacher over here. And that can be really tricky because you did not create that collaboration. The student is the center point for that collaboration. So that's just one more challenge. And that's where we have to be really careful about that line between sharing and poaching. It's when the student comes to us. So the first thing we have to do is reach out to that other teacher and say, I want to make sure you know about this. I would love to take you for coffee. I would love to sit down with you and just talk to you about everything that could be awkward. I want you to teach me about this student. How can I best support this student? And really involve the first teacher, I would say the teacher that the student started with, to lead you and guide you into how their opinions on how to work with the current student. So that's just something that I was thinking of. So how does collaboration manifest in our businesses? Because people are like, well, that's all great and dandy. Give me some practical stuff. So for my voice studio, Faith Culture Kiss Studio for Acting, I do kind of an asterisk model where I'm kind of the mothership, and then I have all these different collaborators that I will send students to. And that the agreements that I have with my students is that you will not come to me to work French diction. You don't want to do that. But however, being part of this studio, you get to be part of my network, and I have people that I want you to meet with. So if I know that I cannot serve a student in a certain way, then I am going to bring in someone who is going to do it better. It saves me. It saves everybody. So I'm not sure. I would think that some of my asterisk people connect with each other, but I don't bring them all into one big room. I'm more like reaching out and collaborating with each touch point. How do you do it, Kristen?
Yeah, I never set out to be a collaborative teacher. In fact, in 2017, I think I remember telling you, I will never work with another. I don't want to hire another teacher. I am a sole prop. Nope, nope, nope. And then I met my beautiful flute friend, Sarah Robertson, and we founded Sand Dollar Music together. And we decided we wanted it to be a place where we could build a community and we could collaborate. And so we prioritized that, but she being a flute teacher, me being a voice teacher, there wasn't a ton of overlap except in our hearts, right? And then I happened to meet this young teacher / pianist named Coleman Clark. And he began coming into the studio. I would contract him to come play for my students. And I would kind of throw like, hey, you're a singer. What would you do here? And over time, it developed into a true mentorship because I could see him light up when he would begin to work with these singers. And there was such joy in his pedagogy, and there was such respect in how he interacted with our students. And I mean, if you're an independent teacher, you love teenagers, right? And you are like fiery about serving developing voices. And I saw that in him, and it delighted my heart so much. And we really developed this true teaching partnership where we play to each other's strengths and we also strengthen each other's weaknesses. So now we truly share students back and forth. So sometimes that means that we're both in this lesson together. Sometimes that means that students book with either me or him. We are regularly meeting to confer about rep, to discuss their progress, and to kind of plan trajectories for how they can work together and how they can continue to succeed together. So that's kind of how we do it. And I'll talk about, we have some other models. So do you want to talk about Elizabeth Berry Carpenter?
Yes,
So
and
this is
also
great.
I think Kara Transtrom does this as well, but I'm not positive. So
Yeah.
you might have noticed that we're kind of going in an order of scalability here. So my version of collaboration is one and then reaching out. Kristen's version of collaboration is a team of two people. Well, Elizabeth and Kara both have models that are leaning, they're revolutionary. It's so exciting to watch them leaning into this, like, you're going to join this multi-teacher studio essentially, but you're not joining to work with a teacher, you're joining to work with the studio. And then you might have a lesson with a different person every week. And then those teachers are like talking about it. I know that this happens at, I think it's BYU. I'm picturing in my head the face of the woman who started this at her institution, and I feel so awful that I can't remember her name right now because we're going so fast through our
Somebody in the chat can tell us.
Yeah, someone in chat, tell us if you know who it is. So, but it's this idea that the student belongs to all of the teachers and the teachers belong to the student. And so whoever is going to be needed at that. So that's kind of a one-to-many. So we've got the one-on-one, the team of the two, and then the one-to-many. And then Kristen, why don't you talk about the one to kind of a mass?
Yeah, so like what we do in Speakeasy.
Mm-hmm.
So in the Speakeasy Cooperative, of which Michelle is the founder and I'm the community manager, we have two different ways that we can do collaborative teaching in the Speakeasy. So the first is Speakeasy substitutes. So that's truly like we can contract each other to sub in. So if somebody wants to go on maternity leave, or if they need to take a vacation or whatever, we just contract each other. And people are responsible for working out the details of that among themselves. But yeah, it's truly like, hey, sub in for me. The other thing that we do, and I love this model, it's called Open Studio. And so what we do is we'll hop into the group and we'll say, hey, I've got a singer. They are working on this song for this audition. Here's when we're working with them. Here's my Zoom link. Would you please hop in? And so sometimes we might want to do an open studio to have teachers come in and work on a specific concept or a specific vocal issue or whatever. So that's one reason we might do that. Another reason we might do an open studio is to provide an audience for our students. Sometimes, especially with COVID, with all of our recitals and stuff being shut down, our kids need to be singing in front of people. And so sometimes we're just bodies for them to sing to, and we just provide smiling faces and jazz hands. Sometimes, and this is my favorite reason for open studio, we do it because we want feedback on our own teaching. And this is incredibly vulnerable, but this is part of collaborative work. Is saying, hey, I'm feeling stuck here. Can you watch what I do and help me get better? And so part of what we do is like, this is what I'm working on with this singer. Can you just observe what I do and give me some words and some language about how to serve them better? So those are some other ways that collaborative teaching works. There's no right or wrong way. I mean, like, you can build out a collaborative model in any direction. It's what works for your students and how do you serve your singers. But there's a lot of benefits for those singers. So Michelle, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So some of the benefits that I've seen in my collaborative teaching of all sorts. And by the way, I have hired SECO substitutes. So I had jury duty. And actually Karen was one of my substitutes.
Oh.
I brought in, and then Eden Castillo helped me out. Right? So anyway, benefits to students, increased opportunities. Y'all know this is a networking profession. Who you know matters. And so the more teachers that your students know, the more opportunities they have for gigs, for letters of rec, for connection, for, all of these things. Also, exposure to varying perspectives and skills. Very important in order to give the student back the autonomy that they need to have over their own education. It is much easier for a student to say, I agree with that, or that works for me, or that doesn't work for me, when it's not the one relationship that they are hanging their hat on. in order to get to their vocal awesomeness, right? If you hang a student's hat on one person, that is putting them in a position where they do not have authority and autonomy over their own skill set.
And then you run the risk of developing a parent-child dynamic, which has its own other set of issues.
I mean, and at the worst, it would be abuse, right? At the worst, and I mean, Dana Lynn Varga wrote an article about that. So if she's around and she wants to post that article, she should.
Yeah.
If you're there, she should. I'm sorry, I should it on you, Dana, if you're here. Modeled behaviors of collaboration and collegiality. We mentioned this early on, but this is it, friends. Please teach your students how to work in a group environment. Please teach your students how to have a conversation with their colleagues respectfully, even when it gets tense, even when there's a disagreement. You know what I mean? So please teach them that. Also, it offers among diverse ages, areas of emphasis. Did I lose my place on here? No, I did not. I lost my place. Acknowledges the students' ability. Oh, I already said that. Look, it's like I just knew what to say. Kristen, what are the benefits to the teacher?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, since we're all working musicians, right, a lot of the benefits sort of parallel each other, because also with the teacher comes an increased level of marketability and sellability, greater sphere of influence, increased opportunities for ourselves. The more people in our industry we know, the more people there are to call us out for gigs, to give us student leads, to invite us to collaborate. The more industry professionals we know, the more auditions we know about that we can then send on to our students. A greater sphere of influence, to me, this is vital, because as artists, especially right now, the work that we do is so important. And if we are just staying in our own bubble of safety and security, and I work with these 3 pianists and I'm the only voice teacher in my town, nobody's going to hear about our art. We can't we can make things better, we can serve people, but our scope is incredibly limited. Versus if we put ourselves out there and we partner with people and we choose to lay down our armor and be vulnerable and invite them into our studios and invite them into our worlds, our sphere of service expands exponentially. People can't invite you to do stuff they don't know about you. People can't invite you to come, sing Messiah or whatever it is you want to do if they don't know you're there. Sing for your students. My students have actually gotten gigs because other voice teachers know about them and want them to come sing for their stuff. We also develop a greater body of knowledge ourselves. When we contract with other professionals who have different skill sets than we do, we stand to gain so much. And I can give you an example. I'm a garbage pianist, and there's no pride around that. It's fine. It's a fact. I don't care. It's fine. So what did I do? I hired Coleman to come in and play for my people because I got tired of being awful. But here's what I found. What his area of emphasis is jazz and pop piano. And so throwing lead sheets and chord charts at him, I have learned so much in the past year just by watching how he fills in the spaces between the chord changes, what inversions he chooses, what ornaments he chooses, what suspensions he chooses in jazz pieces. And now it's to the point, if you give me a lead sheet, I'm not awful and I'm not scared, because I've worked with an industry expert who gets it, right? The other area where we can benefit, our own teaching skyrockets when we are accountable to other people.
Preach.
So when
say it again.
Our own teaching skyrockets when we are accountable to other people. So what this means is if there is another voice professional in the room, or that your student is going back to, you will instinctively level up your teaching game so hard because you want to give your best and you don't want to bring it weak. And I can give you an example of that. So just a couple of weeks ago, a teacher friend contracted me to do some Italian diction work with her student. I have such tremendous respect for this teacher. Oh my goodness, she has coached me and helped me so much. And I was honored beyond words that she would trust one of her beloved students with me. So I hustled the heck out of this thing because I'm like, I got to send you back with flawless diction. And of course, I would have tried to do a good job anyway, but because I'm accountable to this other person, I really leveled it up. And we all do. We all would do that because we all want to give our best and be our best. Another area where we stand to benefit, freedom and peace of mind in having a team rather than having to go it alone. It reduces the mental fatigue of having to know it all and be it all. And right now, I think voice teachers are experiencing this because we're feeling this pressure of like, I got to be able to teach art song. I got to be able to teach classic musical theater and contemporary. I got to be able to teach belt. I got to be able to teach all this stuff, pop. Oh my gosh, right? No, you don't. You don't. You have to have a team. You have to know people who can. So when someone comes into our studios and they want to learn something that we don't honestly feel we can teach and we don't ethically feel we can charge for, we have people. We have people that we can refer them out to so that they can get the information they need so that they can perform the music that they love with success. The other thing about this freedom and peace of mind and this teamwork is it makes transitions easier because there's someone to pick up the slack. A very personal example of this is back in October, my 5-year-old ended up in the hospital with a collapsed lung. I had 7 lessons scheduled for that day, and I was supposed to host a speakeasy event. So I'm rushing to the emergency room, calling Michelle, going, Michelle, Julia's in the hospital and she can't breathe, and I don't know what to do. And so Michelle, my teammate in speakeasy, said, don't worry, I got it. And then I'm rushing to the hospital, and I'm calling Coleman, going, Coleman, Julia's in the hospital and she can't breathe. I don't know what I'm going to do. We've got 7 lessons today. I'm thinking he can just call and cancel them for me. What does my teammate do? He says, don't worry, I'm going to teach them. And he shows up to the studio and he teaches those 7 lessons seamlessly. And I was able to prioritize my family and be there with my daughter. And this is what happens when we build teams out of trust and collegiality and respect. We don't have to be alone anymore. And in an industry where so much of what we do is solitary, we're known as soul props, for goodness sake, right? We're known as independents. In an industry where so much of what we do is solitary, having a team is absolutely vital. One of the final benefits, we could go on. There are infinite benefits, but the last one that I want to mention is when you're a teacher and you have a team of collaborators that you work with and that you can refer your students out to, it makes you look like a rock star. And I'm going to tell you right now, Michelle Marquardt DeVoe and I, we name drop in our lessons all the time. And we have no shame around it because we want our students to know that we're out there working. We're out there making connections for them. And we want to help them be better connected so that when they start or continue their careers, they've got the support and they've got the teams that they need as well. Also, from a marketing perspective, it helps your students see what they're paying for. Because they, like Michelle was saying, in her model, you're not just buying one-on-one time with her, you're buying into that community. You're buying into, she's the mothership, right? And then everybody else gets to benefit from the connections that she's worked so hard to make. So, yeah, Michelle, other thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think we should boop over to how to get started because we have a lot of practical questions I can see in your question thing. So I'm going to weave in some answers to some of these questions in how to get started.
Awesome.
So first of all, what you've got to do is you have to determine whether or not you even want to be a collaborator. And this is really important because I know that Kristen and I have made this sound very sexy, but you have to do some soul searching because in order to be a collaborator, what you are signing up for is the potential of difficult conversations. You are signing up to become emotionally mature. You are signing up to hear that you might be wrong and learn that you might be wrong and realize, oh, I've been teaching this in a way that isn't as effective as I thought I was. So be real clear on if you really want to do this or not.
It's signing up for humility.
Right. Exactly. So are you lonely? Are you burned out? Or are you needing some new energy in your studio? Because being lonely and trying to turn that collaborator into filling that role for you in your life is not necessarily the wisest thing to do, because it adds it takes away a level of collegiality, right? Mm-hmm. What aspects of your teaching, the next thing you want to ask is, what aspects of your teaching could use a second opinion? So things where maybe if you're just starting out teaching a certain style, maybe you're just starting out as teaching in general, like all of that kind of thing, you have to figure out where are those areas that you want to have plugged in. And then the next question is, what do you hate to teach? What do you just not like to teach? And so
French diction.
So, that you could outsource. So really digging into kind of your own model. I'd like to address, I know we have a lot of questions, it looks like, around pricing and fee structure and like the practicality of this. So as you're going to hate me for answering like this, but the reality is that until you figure out what you want your model to be, you're not going to know the answer to that question. So for me, I like the model of my student being able to like pay me the sum of money and then I take care of them. So I negotiate terms with my teachers. I say, how much do you charge? And I pay them. I pay the teacher directly as a business expense for mine. If that person needs extra help and the teacher says to me, I really think they need 3 more sessions, then I go to the student and I say, listen, I got your first couple sessions for you, but you're really needing some growth here. So I would like you to go and meet separately with them, and then you just take care of the payment with them. If you are doing this in a team or a multi-teacher studio, depending on how you've set up your business structure, maybe all of the money is coming into the business, and then you're maybe doing an hourly model where every teacher is getting paid the same for the teaching time, and then maybe there's some administrative hour fee that you're paying. But until you figure out what you want it to look like in your studio, we can't really tell you, well, how to price this. Now, pricing is something that you have to determine. It's not in the scope of this talk, but it's something you have to determine by knowing everything that you just have to know how much money you need to make. So that conversation isn't about how much do I think a student's going to pay. That conversation needs to start with how much money do I need to make in order to provide the service that I'm going to provide. So I want to kind of move away from that literal pricing conversation and just give some framework for that. If you feel like you need to outline this in a contract, what people are allowed to do, what people aren't allowed to do, then I would say you are not ready to collaborate. If this is something that feels like you have to outline every little teeny tiny yes and no, then that's a fear-based thing. And I would say, take a couple step back, find out why you want to determine that, and then come back to that contract question when both teachers have decided that the contract is there to keep both parties clear on scope of service, but not on treading on toes.
Yes, because we want to be clear. This is a joyful thing.
Yeah.
When you have the right collaborative partners in your studio, it's relief. It is freedom. It's, whoo, I trust you and I'm going to go take a walk. You do this. Yeah. And when you've primarily worked with yourself, it does feel daunting, and it feels a little bit, because you're used to doing it all. But when it's done well and when it's with the right people, there will come that freedom of, oh, I don't have to do it all. This is great. This is so much easier than I thought it would be. So we have a couple of questions around how do you know who is a good teacher, or how do you get started? So I think we can refer back to our points to kind of answer some of these. So who do you already know who you like and respect? Who do you already know in your community? Is there somebody that you may have seen at a rehearsal somewhere, or maybe you sang with them in opera chorus, or maybe you did a gig with them a couple of years ago and you had in the back of your mind, you know what, they sing pretty great. No. Take them out for coffee, invite them to come in and maybe do a master class, do like a little mini coaching session with a couple of students. Just get your feet wet. And we invite you to start small. like what Michelle has is decades in the making. What I have is definitely at least 2 years in the making. This is really fleshed out. It doesn't have to be at this broad scope. You can start small with one person.
Yeah. And can I put in here too, I think the question, I would just invite anyone who has kind of this question to say, what are you worried about? What are you worried about? Why is that question coming up for you about how do I find a good teacher? Well, are you worried that you're going to look bad? Are you worried that the student is going to get misinformation? What are you worried about? And then dig into that, and that will help you frame how you look for people, right? So like, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's my van down by the river moment when it comes to this, you know? And how can I take steps to ensure through the questions that I ask, through the events that I invite this person into, how can I solve my own problem by alleviating my own fears and reservations? We're a little bit off script. Do you want to do final thoughts and then like just boop into questions?
Sure. Yeah. And one other thought that I had, this is also a great way if you know younger teachers who you are ready to invest in, because, you know, in every teacher's career, there comes this pivotal point, and mine came 2 years ago, and I can tell you the date, where you realize I'm not a newbie anymore. I'm no longer an apprentice. I'm a journey person, right? I'm like in the thing. And so it's time for me to pay forward and give back what was done for me. And so if you are at that place in your career also, this is a great time to find younger teachers who want to start teaching but need a little bit of motivation, need a little bit of structure around how to do it.
And a little mentorship.
Do what?
And a little mentorship.
Yes. Who do you know in your community who needs a leg up, who needs somebody to champion them a little bit? That's a great place to start too. Yeah, so final thoughts, and then we'll just dive into questions. So Steve Jobs quote, because we're businessy people, so we have great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people. We see this in art all the time. Goodness, none of us does anything amazing alone. It always is more meaningful when there is a group of people involved. None of us is as smart as all of us. We don't have to be lonely in our work. We don't have to carry the needless burden of feeling like we have to know it all and do it all and be it all. We don't have to do work that we don't know how to do. We can hire other experts to fill in those gaps. We can model much needed humility, wisdom, and deference in our field. We can give our colleagues the opportunities that they need, deserve, and have worked for. We can bring in trusted experts, and we can free ourselves to do what we love and what we're awesome at. We can choose to shine a spotlight on each other, to create opportunities for creative collaboration and pedagogical partnership to spur on our students and each other to greatness. We can do more than get by. We can thrive with a little help from our friends.
That was so good!
Did you have church?
I did. I had church. She didn't tell me what she was going to say at the end, everybody. But I think that even just the way we're talking together and the way we put together this presentation is that we can be modeling. Like, this is what you do, is you get to know a person, and then you get really honest with them and say, what do I want to say? What do you want to say? What's going to be good? Nope, I defer to you. You say that thing. Nope, I defer to you. You say that thing. And, oh, I don't really agree with that. No, I want to say it different. No, that's clunky. Let's do it again. You know, and being able to kind of have the arguments in a safe space, which is that's kind of a whole other level of being a human. And with those abilities, a whole level, of being an artist.
Yes.
Because if we can't deal with complex, I could go off on this. If we can't deal with complex emotional issues, how are we teaching our people how to perform?
It's vulnerability. It's vulnerability in art and in business. It all comes down to just being able to say, I don't have all the answers and I never will, but I trust that you might have some of them.
Amen. Let's go through some of these questions and see if we can answer them.
Erin asks, how can we encourage this and make this happen practically in more rural settings? Erin, I love this question. I'm going to I'm going to be real. Hang on.
Here we go. Let me drink my water.
Well, I'm from Georgia, and usually I mask my accent, but I'll bring it out for you. Alan Henderson will understand me. Nobody else will. But I grew up in a very rural setting, and so I get it. There were, maybe 2 voice teachers in town, and there wasn't a ton of back and forth. So now things are different, and now, in a weird way, we have a global pandemic that set us free because we don't have those location boundaries that we used to have.
Yeah.
So now, any of your voice teacher friends on the internet, you got like 220 of them there in the YouTube chat right now. Any of your voice teacher friends on the internet can now be your collaborators through Zoom, through FaceTime, whatever. They can hop in and serve your studio. And look at that. All of a sudden, your students are no longer tied to your state. They're all over. They have connections across the globe because we're not tied to a specific location anymore.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. Next question is, how might you suggest beginning this discussion in situations where there is an existing culture of viewing other teachers as threats within the community?
Dang.
Okay, I will tell you how. I would like to start a conversation with you about something that is potentially awkward. Are you willing to have a conversation with me about collaboration? And then if they say yes, great. And if they say no, move on to the next person. You cannot force people into thinking new things. You can only invite them into a conversation, right? So my number one suggestion around this is always be asking permission. May I talk to you about this? Would you be interested in collaborating? I have some thoughts that I would love to share instead of what teachers tend to do is, I'm doing a thing and I'd like to do it for you. No, I have something I'd like your opinion on. Invite them from the beginning to have an opinion, to have a place at the table. I would also say, check yourself in why, not you personally, Andrew, but like we all.
Andrew, check yourself.
Andrew, check yourself. All we have to do is check ourselves and say, why do I believe that this culture is here? What data do I have giving me is this true, or is this a story I'm telling myself based on a couple things that have happened? Because we're humans, and guess what we do, right? 25 wonderful things can happen, and what do we remember? Like the one asshatty thing, right? Mm-hmm. So really looking in and being like, do I really not trust this person? Is this really a threat? Or is this just a hard conversation? That's what I would do specific. And it looks like someone else asked, do you have language specific for approaching other teachers in the area and choir director to begin this work? Yes. And so kind of to that same point, how can I show up for you? I am a teacher in the community. I am looking to support what is going on in the community. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that I can take you out to lunch for? We can have now on internet, can we have a coffee chat over the Zoom? Can we have a phone call? How can I support you?
Yeah.
And really, instead of leading with everything that you can offer, leading with how can I be involved in making what you do better? Mm-hmm. Because you can't answer that question anyway until you can't help them until you know what they actually need help with.
Well, this comes down to trust. And it comes down to assuming the best of our colleagues, which is an incredibly hard thing to do. As singers, we are trained for the spotlight. As singers, we are trained for downstage, center stage, all eyes on me. And it is a really hard thing to step back and go, you know what? Today I belong in the back row of the chorus. Today is your day. Or you know what? Today is the day for you to come into the spotlight with me. And so if you're watching this and you're feeling like, right, that's okay. That's okay, because consider our training, especially if you are a classically oriented singer. Our training is downstage, center stage. It is, and recitals, right, where it is all you. We don't do a ton of band work. We don't do a ton of gigs that require, most classical singers, I would say, have not done the classic jazz combo thing of it's my turn. And then it's your turn. And then it's your turn, right? We don't know how to stand back and watch someone else shine.
It's so funny. You know what that makes me think of is like, you know, the concept of the difference between active listening and then like waiting to talk, right? Where like if you're in a gig kind of, you know, just to bring it back to music and performing, it's like if you're in a gig environment, a band, rock, pop, jazz, you aren't waiting to go. You are actively listening to everything that's going on so that when it's your turn to come in and everyone in the group is like, yeah, it's your turn, you know, it's an active listening. Whereas sometimes, you know, sometimes in other genres, it's very much waiting for your turn. Because, and I don't know, we could probably, that's a whole other 2022. Diane, I want to do this. Diane Reich and Gail Lockwood. Thank you, whoever in the chat figured that out. I see her beautiful brown hair in my mind's eye, and I couldn't remember her name.
Thank you, Christine.
So,
That's really helpful.
Someone's asking, are you in a formal contractual agreement with the other teachers in your studio? What is the physical setup of how you do this? Does each teacher have their own space? So I would say it depends on which model you're using. I do not have a formal contractual agreement other than emails, which can be binding. So yes, emails are binding. Do you have a formal contract with Coleman?
Coleman and I have a formal contract, yes. And it's more scope of expectations for both of us so that we're both on the same page and know what to expect. So it's not, and I want to be really clear because I know sometimes we hear the word contract and we get like, we find it offensive, right? It's not because I don't trust him. It's because I do trust him.
Yeah.
And it's because I want us to both be set up to have clear terms around this is what success looks like in our partnership.
Yeah. And contracts, friends, contracts are designed for both parties to have a win.
Yes.
So if if you're a newer teacher and you are being invited into a multi-teacher studio or collaborative model and you don't feel like that contract also gives you a win, that's something you should listen to, because contracts are there to determine the way the communication is going to happen and the way that the relationship will be mutually beneficial, not one way. Okay, do we have suggestions for a teacher who recently moved to a new community and how to start creating collaboration with teacher pianists, etc., from Alyssa, it looks like.
Well, again, now
go for it, Kristen, who just moved to a new community literally 3 days ago.
Seriously, y'all, yeah. I mean, thank goodness for my team teacher who has literally carried my studio and like kept the helm steady. Is that the boat word? I don't know. Whatever. You want to talk about collaborative teaching? It's worked this week because my students are still having lessons with Coleman and everything's fine. And I live in Las Vegas now and I used to live in Ohio like 5 minutes ago. So,
you know what? I just thought of something.
What?
I think I want to qualify what I said about the team teaching with the contracts.
Yes.
I think if you're hiring someone for a one-off masterclass or a one-off workshop, it is very helpful to have a scope of service contractual agreement about whose IP is going to be whose IP. IP is short for intellectual property. So whose is the intellectual property? If there's any marketing language that can be used and can't be used. So I want to be clear that having someone come into your studio and do a one-off masterclass is not necessarily collaborative teaching. So that would be a good place to have very clear, specific boundaries around payment and scope of service and all of that. I didn't want to forget that. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, that's huge. That's really, really good. So suggestions for a teacher who's recently moved. Internet is very helpful. Thankfully, we have Nats also, which is a great way to connect. That sounds super patronizing. I'm like, really? It's a really useful thing. A lot of times communities have Facebook groups of local teachers. I don't know, like I feel like Facebook makes it so easy to connect with people now. Just shoot them a message and say, hey, I just moved here and can we please meet for coffee? I would love to start making connections in this area. The other thing is church choir directors. I had my community in Dayton, Ohio, because I started singing in a church choir. The choir master was the chorus master for Dayton Opera. And so all of a sudden, boom, I'm friends with Jeff Powell and now I know everybody. So it's a lot of times it's a cascading thing of you meet one person and then they start to begin to open doors for you.
Yeah. And where I would be real careful and where you have a real opportunity to kind of start breaking down some systemic issues in our field is be very intentional about reaching out to people that are not like you.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Do not be like, well, who does exactly what I do?
Mm-mm.
You know, go to the church across town that you don't necessarily agree with. go to the choir, the community choir that is, learning off rote because they're the social justice choir rather than like the community choir that is audition only and, I don't know. I just made that up. I'm trying to make something up and it's bad.
No,
and then doing that again with humility and deference and listening ears, not here's what I got. Do you want it?
Yeah, we're not selling ourselves, right? I mean, ultimately, whether or not you ever actually collaborate with these people, it just never hurts to have friends, right? I mean, like, let's remember, like, it's starting to sound a little smarmy, like, well, you take them out for coffee, and then you say, no, like, build genuine relationships, because whether or not you actually end up working together, it's always nice to have friends in your field who get it, who you can commiserate with, and hopefully collaborate with.
And join communities of voice teachers. So join NATS, join PAVA, join VIP, join Vocology in Practice, I think that is. Join Speakeasy Cooperative, join a thing.
And the Facebook group for Voice Teachers for Young Singers is a great one. That's such a great voice teachers
Facebook
community.
Groups, all of that. So we have like 4 minutes left. Do you want to like tell people where to hang out with us later? Because we don't have enough time anymore here.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, you and I are always in the Speakeasy Cooperative. Is that what you want me to say?
No, you have it right here. You have it in our notes.
In our notes. Let me, shall I refer to these notes we wrote? You can find us in the Guidebook app. You can come to the Mixer tomorrow. That is at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern. You can find out about that in Guidebook. Don't be shy. We're here for you. If you have questions, I mean, we both have a fairly heavy internet presence, so you can find, I'm co-founder of Sand Dollar Music. Michelle is founder of Faith Culture Kiss Studio for Voice and Acting. You can find our websites. You can find our social medias, all of those things. We care about you. We care about your studios and your singers. We truly believe that especially independent voice teachers have an opportunity to serve and propel our art form forward in a way that we've never seen before. And it is such an exciting time, particularly for independent voice teachers, to link arms and carry each other forward. And we want to serve you. So if you've got questions, come find us. We would love to talk.
And scene.
There's that.
We finished 2 minutes early. Now what do we do?
We were so worried we would go long.
Oh, I'm going to look over here.